Looking forward to this ranked matchup in the SEC between Missouri and South Carolina, but I'm not here alone because we got to break down this big-time SEC battle. So here with me is Gerard Hamilton from Power Mizzou and JC Sherbert from the Big Spur. And guys, this is just the 15th meeting between these two squads, so we don't get to see it all that often. We got to soak it up here. Mizzou, though, they lead the all-time 9-5, but the Tigers are just 1-2 on the road this season, while the Gamecocks are in the middle of a tough stretch right now. When Mizzou comes to town, it'll be their third consecutive week playing an AP-ranked opponent. We're just going to hit on some matchups today. Let's start with the Missouri offense versus the South Carolina defense, and we really can zero in on a very specific matchup, and that is Missouri's offensive line versus South Carolina's front seven on defense. So, Gerard, let's start with you. How do the Tigers fare in that battle?
It's going to be a challenge for them this week. I mean, they're playing a very good South Carolina defensive line. That front seven unit it's pretty good. It's one of the best in the SEC for sure. And it doesn't help that Missouri just lost their starting center, Connor Tollison, due to a leg injury suffered in last week's game in the third quarter. So you got your center down, and then we add in, they're still playing with a backup quarterback in Drew Pine. That could be some communication issues. And Coach Drinkwitz talked about that this week as far as being prepared for any of those issues, because that may happen. That's just natural if you don't have your starting center and your starting quarterback. So you add that in, struggles on the left side of the line a little bit, don't know what Caden Green's status is at left guard. It's going to be a tough one facing that front seven with all the pressure and tackles for loss and all the stuff they can do to get in the backfield.
Yeah, with South Carolina, I think the key defensively is, they haven't really stopped these guys the last 3 or 4 meetings. They're in the midst of a 5-game losing streak in the battle for the Mayor's Cup. And every single year, it seems like Eli Drinkwitz, no matter who his offensive coordinator is, knows where to attack the South Carolina defense, no matter how good the Gamecock defense may be. So Carolina's going to have to play assignment football. I know Missouri likes to run the outside zone, so South Carolina's going to have to stop that. I think their speed on defense gives them an advantage there. Vanderbilt tried to do that several times last week, and it didn't work. But what concerns you in this football game, and maybe with Missouri center being injured and questions at guard, this helps, is Missouri running right at you with Marcus Carroll. Teams that have run right at the Gamecocks. At times, LSU did this in kind of a sneaky way and was successful on the ground. So stopping the run for the Carolina defense has to be job numero uno this weekend, especially with a backup quarterback in there for Missouri. You want to get them into third and more than 7 obvious passing downs to let that pass rush go to work.
On the other side, South Carolina offense versus Missouri defense. I'll keep it simple here, JC. What's the goal on offense for the Gamecocks in this one?
I think block. I mean, South Carolina has the last 2 weeks against Texas A&M and Vanderbilt, the Gamecocks have run for 500 yards. Rocket Sanders, of course, has been a big part in that. I think he's the best back in the SEC. When healthy, he's quite a weapon, 230 pounds. Fans will remember him at Arkansas in 2022 when he rushed for 1,500 yards. Had kind of an up and down last year in Fayetteville and got in the transfer portal and came to South Carolina. He's healthy now, and he has space to run. And when Rocket has space to run, he can, as we've seen, do a lot of damage. I think it's also important for the South Carolina offense to not commit turnovers. That's been a big thing since the Oklahoma game. South Carolina, I believe, only has 1 or 2 turnovers during that time period and hasn't really given up a lot of sacks. That would be point number 3. When you get into passing downs, Lenore Sellers, the quarterback, has gotten a lot better at feeling the pressure, avoiding the pressure, getting positive yards, throwing the ball away. South Carolina was by far the worst team in the SEC 3 weeks ago at giving up sacks. That number has come down dramatically since then. So you can't let Missouri sack you and have those lost yardage plays like you had at the beginning of the season. Tigers are awfully talented up front on defense. So I think blocking on offense, and to a lesser extent, don't turn the football over, are the 2 keys at Williams-Brice on Saturday.
For Missouri, it starts with gap discipline. Like you just mentioned, Rocket Sanders has been one of the best backs in the league for quite a minute. So obviously he can get going. Once he gets downhill, he's really hard to stop. So that leads to the next point, which is tackling him and Sellers. I mean, when they get in space, they can run you over, and they're still elusive too. They can run around you, but they can definitely run you over. They've got to wrap up, and at times this year, Missouri has been prone to not wrapping up. Sometimes trying to deliver that hit stick, that NCAA has, trying to do that like the video game. And sometimes that doesn't work. And facing these bigger backs or these bigger, stronger quarterbacks at times, I mean, missed tackle, and now you've given up, 5-10 extra yards or more. So they've got to wrap up. That's been a big thing. And then for the secondary, it's kind of similar as far as just being disciplined, keeping your eyes to your matchup on the receivers and things like that. They've had, times in the past where they've gotten burnt on big, deep plays because their eyes are in the backfield instead of worrying about the receiver. And now quarterback has rolled out, made some type of play, and now there's a 40, 50-yard play, a touchdown given up because they weren't being disciplined. So they need to have gap discipline, make sure they're not trying to be a hero, playing hero ball. They got to make sure they wrap up. And then in the secondary, they've got to make sure they're worried about their assignment.
All right, guys, we've been having fun with this final question so far this season with all these game previews. Sometimes we learn something from this, and sometimes it's just a little crazy. Today, it's a little crazy. We simulated this game 20 times on EA College Football 25. Sometimes the video game is accurate. Sometimes they do not believe at all in the Tigers because South Carolina won this matchup 17 of the 20 times. That's a lot. For each team, let's start with the overwhelming virtual victors. JC, what's the biggest key for South Carolina to pull out a win in the real football game?
I'm just going to throw out, because I couldn't decide, I'm going to throw out double T. Double T, tackle and turnovers. You got to tackle on defense. You can't turn the ball over on offense. Carroll and Noel, if you don't get them on the ground, they're the type of backs that can hurt you. And, of course, we know about Luther Burden and Theo Weiss and their yards after the catch. So tackle, and then, for goodness sakes, don't turn the ball over and give Missouri a short field while they're hamstrung on offense.
For Missouri, offensively, they did well, not really turning over the ball. I think they won the turnover ratio versus Oklahoma 4-1. So they did really well. Drew Pine, coming off that 3-interception game versus Alabama, threw 3 touchdowns in the second half and didn't have any turnovers of his own. So obviously can't turn the ball over. But what they did in the first half, the offense wasn't really that great. Had a run pass ratio of 11-22. In the second half, it went to 16-24, which is kind of the sweet spot. That's when they started making plays offensively in the second half. So they can kind of, obviously establish the run, but get the passing game, out there. So South Carolina has to respect it. That'll help. And then obviously, again, back to that front seven, South Carolina has one of the most dangerous defenses in the entire league. So you've got to block, protect the ball, and try to keep South Carolina with a healthy run-pass option.
Love it. Double T. I'm stealing that. I'll do a single T, and that is thank you. Thank you both so much for being here. We appreciate the great breakdowns. Keep it locked in to Power Mizzou for all things Missouri football and the Big Spur for everything you need to know about South Carolina.